Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting for Bedford Township for May 3rd, 2022. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, at this time, if Pastor Brenner Trepovich from Lewis Avenue Baptist Church could open us up in prayer.
Thank you for the opportunity. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for this day. Thank you for the time that we get to spend tonight here and review the needed items that are set before us. We ask you that you please lead us and guide us and help us to understand everything that is set, and that you would grant us clarity of mind and purpose for why we're here. We ask, Lord, that you please bless each and every one of the decision makers. We ask that you please help us, Lord, to do well. We thank you for our township. We thank you for the place where we live, and thank you for making it so beautiful. I ask that you please help us in all that we do. May we follow your principles in 1 Corinthians 14:40. May all things be done decently and in order. It is our prayer. In your name we ask. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very much. Okay, first item is the public hearing. I look for a motion to open the public hearing.
Motion to open the public hearing.
Okay, motion in support of Mr. Bruning. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Ms. Jandisek?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. This is a request for a possible issuance of a Class C liquor license. Ms. Hirschberger?
You were provided with the amendment that we just did to the ordinance for the liquor license with the point system and the two applications. So I don't know if you, at this point, would like the applicants to come up and speak, or?
Well, what we could do, we can have the applicants speak, and then if anybody from the public would like to speak to the applicants, we can give the public an opportunity to speak on it too. So if the first applicant would like to come with Team Breskel, come on up.
Good evening, Tony Breskel on behalf of Mi Ranchito Taco Shop. As is with many of these meetings when we do it like this, I prefer to trust that you guys have had a chance to review the applications that have been submitted. I'm not going to rehash it, but I would love to answer any questions. And I guess saying that, I do have a couple quick supplements with regard to the application. I've been in communication with Mr. Goldsmith throughout this process. And as a result of that, I had a couple of questions that I provided answers to. One of the issues that I wanted to address initially was in my application, or our application, we reference a possible expansion area into the actual larger school there at Liberty Corners. The entire unit is available. That would be our possible expansion area. There's a common wall that we could break through and tie the existing taco shop into the larger space. We have secured an option for that entire lease, or to lease the entire space. I do have a copy of that option. I was able to provide it digitally, but it was last minute, so it's not part of this application. But we do have the first option to rent that entire space, which is the main school building at Liberty Corners. There were a couple of concerns that I had discussed with Mr. Kohler with regard to the existing facility and some compliance issues. It seems as though before my clients moved in, there was some, I don't want to say structural changes, but there was definitely the bar area. I had never been in there before it was changed, but the bar area that used to look into the kitchen and patrons could sit at, it sounds like that was moved in about 3 feet, and then a wall was erected. And as a result of that moving before the taco shop took place, the occupancy increased. So now we've got some deficiencies in that regard that we weren't aware of until this process began. All of those would be remedied as a part of this process. And I'm happy to address that a little bit more as we get into some of the questions that each of you may have.
So would that remedy be addressed with the addition of the different lease?
It would. I'm not sure what the remedy would be if we weren't expanding. The main issue being that we're not compliant with regard to the bathroom situation. Apparently the occupancy increased enough that the one bathroom is no longer enough to service the entire place. The additional space that we do have an option to get into already has 2 existing bathrooms, which would bring us in excess of what would be necessary for both spaces combined. But if we didn't expand, which would only happen if we didn't get the liquor license, we'd have to readdress that with Mr. Kohler.
Anybody have any questions? Mr. Goldsmith, did you want to speak to the issues that have been brought up with the building department? And
I can tell you what I know. I spoke with Mr. Kohler when that issue was raised, and I think within minutes of me speaking with Dennis, Dennis and Tony had a telephone call, and Dennis suggested, well, let's go over and look at it right now, and they did. It's my information that the alterations were made before the current occupant took occupancy under its current lease. So they didn't know that there was a deficiency with respect to the bathroom facilities. And I think a fruitful meeting was had between Tony and Dennis. And there will be a resolution to that regardless of whether they are awarded this license. So I was provided electronically a copy of the option. So they have an option, a signed option with the landowner to lease the old schoolhouse to increase their square footage, which is, I think, addressed in one of the elements to the adopted ordinance. So that's what I can tell you about it right now.
all right, anybody else have any comments or questions? Mr. Gore?
Only if it's granted tonight or in the future, how long of a process would it be to get moving on the deficiencies?
I mean, as soon as possible is the immediate answer without the necessary engineered plans that are going to have to be obtained. I'm not sure what a realistic construction turnaround would be. We'd probably take a stab at somewhere around 12 months just to be on the safe side. But, I mean, as Dennis and I talked about, we're going to need engineered drawings. We're going to have a life safety plan developed. We're going to have to comply with all the requirements of likely the building department and the other township areas in that regard. So it's our hope to have it done immediately. But we expect this to be a pretty sizable operation without having had anybody over there to say, here's what the possibilities are. Again, there's a common wall. It's going to have to be eventually broken through so that you can have access from the existing taco shop without going outside to get into the new building. There's some logistics there. There's going to be a change in elevation from the floor in the current building to the floor in the old school, which sits roughly your guys' counter height high as compared to the floor in the new building. So there's some engineering obstacles that certainly aren't difficult to overcome, but I'm the wrong kind of professional to give you a timetable on that. I'm the guy who's going to say, give us as much time as you can so that we can do it right. But certainly when the engineer gets in there and says, here's exactly what we're looking at, here's what we have to do to bring everything up to code, I think the kitchen's in place. I don't think that's going to move. So that's a wonderful thing. We already have suppression. We already have ventilation. We have the key components over there in operation. So for the bulk of the new renovation, we're talking about, moving some walls that's kind of boxed in over there. I've walked the facility. For those of you who haven't, there's a lot of broken up compartments in the old school building. We're going to have to open it up. We're going to have to decide if we need to occupy the entire old building or only half of it. There's just going to need to be an assessment done, Mr. Gore. So to commit to an exact time right now, I can't, but I know that my clients want it done yesterday if they're awarded this permit, because that expansion is the only way to turn this venture into an actually profitable venture, to have that additional capacity in there.
Okay, thank you.
You're dealing with a pretty significant height difference from their floor to the next building's floor. I mean, there's 5 or 6 steps
I'm assuming
to
it
get into
probably
the
had to
old
be
schoolhouse.
ADA compliant.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that could be the problem if the board does something contingent upon, and it's something that, you know what I mean, to where if you keep the kitchen there and you're having, so. Mr. Steiner?
2 things, and I'll just go to Mr. Goldsmith first. If not, maybe Trudy could answer this one. So, as we all know, we've got two applicants here, so there's no direction here one way or the other. So the question on this particular one, if the township board was to award this applicant or make the recommendation for this, how long does it usually take the state to follow through before they'll give full approval? How long has that been in the past?
There's a new investigator assigned to our district, and my experience has been they're moving pretty quickly. They do their background investigation. They have to see the lease, make sure that that's in force and effect. They take a look at the actual premises, the facility. So this license will not become effective until the renovations are complete, because they have to have that facility to move into, unless there was some sort of a hybrid arrangement with the state, the Liquor Control Commission, to allow them to open in their existing facility and then to expand into the larger facility. That's a possibility, but they move pretty quickly now. They have been moving pretty quickly. So I don't see anything in the application that would disqualify this applicant from obtaining a license. Of course, they'll do their own investigation and reach their own conclusions in that regard. I did want to, if I could piggyback on your question, Rick, ask Tony to maybe clarify for the board, because the board members have seen the application. There was, and it's a number of years ago, it goes back to 2015, there was a incomplete tax filing, and that goes back to Toledo Municipal Court 2015. Can you explain that? Was that rectified? Was that resolved?
The issue was resolved, but unfortunately the applicant that it applies to is Jose. Jose's not the one I have with me here today. I have Eggy. But the issue was resolved. It was a tax withholding issue that resulted in a criminal sanction. I can only give you the information that I have available to me, and when speaking with my client, there was a prosecution for it, as we disclosed in our application. I believe that the obligation was satisfied, and I don't even know if there's a period of probation over it. But if for a full, more thorough disclosure of the exact ramifications of that conviction, we'd have to have Jose here to answer that question, and unfortunately he was just out of state.
Okay. With respect to that member, that goes back to 2015. To the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, are there any other items that this board should be aware of? None were disclosed. I would expect that you would disclose anything if you knew about it.
No, I've disclosed every bit of criminal history or any violations of any liquor licenses or anything that any of the applicants that we have before you have ever had on their records, or any memberships in any organizations that they've been a member of. Everything's been fully disclosed in here, including the aforementioned 2015 incident that you're talking about. And my brief review of the application shows me that that is the most recent in time. So 7 years ago is the most recent in time issue that we've had with regard to any kind of criminal conviction or any kind of violation of any sort.
Okay. I thought it best for the board to hear it because they saw it and they might have a question about
Sure.
it. So
no, absolutely.
Sorry to piggyback on your question,
And
Rick.
Mr. Steiner, if I can try to answer your question also, I've been dealing with liquor control a lot in the recent months and years, and we do have a new investigator in town, William O'Reilly, and he seems to be moving expeditiously. He's getting things done very quick, but more important to note is that before my applicant applied to the township, they had already applied to the state. So they actually have a pending application sitting at the state level just waiting municipal approval. They've already submitted the background checks, fingerprints, all the clearances have been submitted, and I checked with Liquor Control to see what the status of that was, and the status is once we get your municipal order or approval sent up to them, then they just continue the processing as though it all showed up at the same time. So we're already one leg up in that game. We have a pending application at the state level with Liquor Control. We are going to be seeking a hybrid type of approval so that we can operate out of the main facility because the nature of the setup is such that we do have a wall dividing these two buildings. And the way that I, as a non-construction person, but observe this situation is we have the opportunity to do an entire build-out and have the last phase of that be breaking through into the new facility to tie the two together, which means operating continuously, generating revenues to pay for the build-out and continue the income stream, which is exactly what we're hoping to do. But it would be our request to Liquor Control to say, we'd like approval right now on the existing facility, and then we'd like to come back and resubmit to you to meet your guys' criteria if conditions are given to us, and then go back to Liquor Control and resubmit with the new facility, have it reinvestigated by the investigator per their normal procedure. It would be no different than making any change to the ownership of a company or anything else. We have to go back to Liquor Control, let them know what the change was, and then they get to reinvestigate and tell us whether they're going to approve that change or that amendment. We're just going to be submitting a new facilities plan to them, and we're going to ask to operate up until that new plan is submitted to them for their approval.
Okay, so Phil, you actually got into part of my second piece of that question. Was the restrictions on the building not being operable and under code brought up to ADA specifics, et cetera? And again, Liquor Control has the ultimate say on this, but if we were to select this applicant, can we make our own stipulations the same way, that it must be brought up to a certain code? I mean, we've got one restroom in there for up to 45 people. That's going to be a difficult one right there. The ADA compliance, if you start to go into that other facility and you use part of that, that could be a difficult issue as well. I mean, I still think it'd be tough to try to put 45 people in the small building itself.
But to answer your question, yes, you can, and we have in the past, and our ordinance provides for it. And we did it with the last applicant for this very license, but because of COVID and unforeseen circumstances, that applicant was not able to follow through. So in this case, since Mr. Breskel disclosed that they would want to, if they were fortunate enough for this board to adopt a resolution awarding this license to this applicant subject to Liquor Control approval, then we would want to make it a condition that the specific areas of current non-compliance, bathroom facilities, restroom facilities, be immediately cured, since they would like to have that liquor license serve the existing premises. We would want that cured within a relatively short period of time. And any other item that Dennis Kohler brought to Mr. Breskel's attention and the tenant's attention would need to be immediately resolved. And then with respect to the build-out, you can attach a reasonable time frame on that. The whole concept is for the township to review applicants and to promote economic development within the township and for the best interests of the township and its residents. So any reasonable conditions could be attached and time frames assigned to those.
Yeah, because I mean, you could say we're going to do something, and if you give them a 1 year to get it developed, they don't do it, and if you've already given the authorization to operate, now you've got a more difficult situation because they're already operating, and then they become non-compliant.
Well, I think their main issue is the bathrooms, right?
Well,
the building permit, ADA. So, I mean, the first thing I would find out is if you can, in fact, break through that wall and utilize that, because that would be the first thing I would do is break through the wall and get the bathrooms operable, and that fixes your bathroom issue for your residents. And then the ADA could be the bathroom that's already there,
but
on the lower level.
If you did that and break through that wall, you'd still have an ADA issue of going from the lower unit up to the schoolhouse.
But that's what they need to find out right away.
Right.
Because they won't be able to obtain the liquor license if they can't.
Right, because it wouldn't be ADA compliant just to get to the bathroom even.
I do know that the existing facility that we're not in right now, the main school building, on the west side of the building where I believe they sort of consider that to be the main doors, there's one set going into the north and one set going into the south half of the building. It used to have a ramp. That ramp was removed, but the landlord did indicate that there used to be a ramp on the outside of that facility. I'm not going to know all of the ins and outs of the ADA compliance issues, but I believe having access, which might be that might be one of the doors that we end up using to gain access to the restaurant, is on one of that side. So there is a ramp that was there. It's absolutely not an issue to get that ramp back there to overcome the height difference between the existing facility and the new, and breaking into the new wall. It just might not, there's not going to be a ramp coming up from the existing facility inside the facility. But we've got, from what I can recall, 4 points of ingress and egress to that new facility. There's a back door, there's 2 side doors, and the front door. I don't know what's on the east side of the building, but there may be something over there as well. So we've got a lot of options to explore, a lot of ground to work with, and a lot of square footage to work with to make sure that everything is brought up to snuff. And it would have been, and it would be our request that all of this would be conditioned on this board and any other board that we have to come in front of, the plans approved, site plan approval, and everything else, to follow all their rules and recommendations. We're not trying to skirt anything. We just know this is the first step.
Yeah, I mean, I'll leave that up, of course, to construction code and everything else, but you certainly wouldn't want to be operating in the schoolhouse building and say, well, you have to go outside and down the ramp to get out. I don't think they'd allow that either. So you probably would have to do the inside as well.
Or the issue of people bringing food from the kitchen up 4 or 5 sets of steps to get to the other dining area.
So, well,
I don't know if
they could
that's,
put a
you know.
pass-through bar from one building to the other. How's that?
Yeah, I don't know.
So, okay, that's all I've got.
Okay. Anybody, you guys have anything else to add, or?
Are there any other questions? Everybody had a chance to review it. The only other thing, I think I included it, we tried to reach out to our neighbors, at least specifically the church being so close. We had some support from them in favor of not having any objections to this. I think I included that message in my application. And, having done this enough with liquor control, I don't foresee any obstacles getting this to go through. And I know we briefly touched on, some background issues with one of the members of the applicant being the LLC and one of the members. In reality, this is a couple, two husband and wife couples that are really operating this. The 2 gentlemen are the members of the company. If there was any pushback, if there was even a thought that there could be any pushback, we would have no problem swapping out members of the LLC, the applicant, to make sure that there was no roadblocks at the state level as far as background checks go. We've got the wife of Jose, who has no obstacles whatsoever that would create a problem. But I don't foresee it to be a problem. I've had numerous applicants over my 20 years of doing this to have background blemishes and have been easily approved at liquor control. And there's, even if they're not approved initially, there's an appeal process that I've discussed with the local investigator, and his exact comment to me was that gives you a chance to show the personal side of your applicant to the commission and give them a chance to appeal their case. So I don't think that's going to happen. That's going to happen, but there's a lot of things that we can do to overcome any background check issues.
Paul, just one last thing. As pointed out by our planning commission, or I'm sorry, the planning department, the lease says 2014 at the top, so you may want to get that corrected with the owners of the property.
I didn't author that, just so you know. I think that was authored by the landlord. So,
Okay.
right.
Well, thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
all right, thanks everyone.
Okay. Maurice, Bedford Diner?
Can I add one thing? I did contact liquor control because both locations are by churches. The church letter is sufficient for this location, and for the other location, they are far enough away from the church that they didn't need a waiver. So I just wanted everyone to be clear on that before we move forward.
Well, thank you. What an honor to be with all of you tonight. I'm Maurice Musa, the owner of Bedford Diner, just down the street from here. You all probably have visited us over there and tried our food. To be short, precise, the liquor license request comes from the clientele themselves. They all come in and say, wouldn't it be nice to have a bottle of beer with my tacos on Tuesdays? Wouldn't it be nice to have a glass of wine with my meal? Or white wine, especially with fish. Anyway, you have my statement. You have my plan. There are not a minor issue with the background check or tax filing or anything like that. I have served our greatest nation proudly. I came to retired from Washington, D.C. and came back over here to be with my family, and we got into the restaurant business. You have everything in front of you. If you have any question for me, I'll be more than happy to answer and support, actually.
So the plan is number 4 would be the new space, correct?
The new space, as for the new space, since the landlord couldn't, Scott Mulch, I'm sure you know who he is, couldn't hold the space for me. He rented it out. But the diner is big enough. I have a banquet room that is ready for me to do whatever I want with it. Also, right on the left side when you walk into the diner, I do have a counter with an opening underneath it. I can have my fridges down there. But my intent is not to have a bar. My intent is to serve the drink at the table with a meal. I'm not going to stay open till 11, 12 o'clock at night. No, I have a life. I have to go home. So it's going to be kind of like a breakfast, brunch spirit, and a drink at dinner time or in the afternoon, period. That's how it is with me. I don't want the headache. I don't want the noise. I don't want to stay up late.
Okay, questions or comments from board members?
I had a question. Krista, can you touch on the delinquent taxes owed for 2017, 2018?
I was not in business 17, 18, sir. I started 2019, 2020, 2021, and we are in 2022.
So those were delinquent personal property taxes for the business that we had 17 and 18. What happens is if a business does not submit a form to the assessing department, if they have less than a certain amount, the assessing department will then estimate their taxes in order to do that. That's what they did in 17 and 18. They were not paid. It says that it's under Bedford Diner. The only thing with the name on this, I would have to double check because anytime there is a change in our tax program, it comes from our assessing department and it doesn't stay. Like if I go back in the history, I have to go back into the different databases to see if the name is changed or not. But when I print a history like this, it just shows the current name on there. But going forward, I look at the 2021, there was no taxes owed on that because the form was filed this year. And obviously this was before my time. And then the treasurer before never went after the delinquent taxes. So unfortunately, it shows that they're delinquent on this.
But it's a non-issue.
But it's a non-issue because you can clearly see in 19 and 20, they were estimated, and then for 2021, it was taken off because obviously he has less than the $80,000 that is required.
Okay.
Already paid them, actually, 2019, 2020. And the previous owner, actually, to add more to that, I mean, he promised me, because I received the letter from the township that he owed taxes, and I gave it to him. And he showed me a proof that he came to the township and paid them. Yes.
So you've owned it since 2019, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it was a diner before then.
Before that, yes.
Yes.
It was under Bedford Diner, LLC.
Who owned that?
A different owner, not me.
Yeah, but who owned that?
Amro Qasim.
Okay.
I don't know if you know him.
No. I mean, is he any relation to you?
No,
or-
sir. I met him at the barber shop, to be honest with you, next door to me.
Okay.
And he wants to sell. I said, I'm a buyer. In a matter of 48 hours, he got a check, and I took over.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Anything else you'd like to add?
I'm right between your hands. If
Mr.
I'm
Supervisor.
given the opportunity, I'll make sure I'm in compliance. Yes, sir.
One question for you that that caught my ear and our clerk's ear. You mentioned beer and wine. Do you want a license for spirits as well? Or because you probably could obtain a license from liquor control for beer and wine consumption on premises without the township's approval. I don't know if you've checked into that or not.
I did not. My attorney, to be honest with you, he was not with me today. And as you can see, I mean, I just left the diner over here and I have to go back to close tonight.
Okay.
I think that's why one applicant didn't apply,
Right.
because they only plan to have that and you can obtain it.
So
I prefer to have it, I mean, to have what's available for me. But if I want to add more than beer and wine in the near future, I will. But as of now, all I want is beer and wine for now to see what's going to happen next. Now, with that being said, you still can serve spirits at the tables too, without having a bar and without having going through the sink level and this and that. So I want to minimize the headache and the expenses as much as I can, but I want to complement the mission that I took. If a customer prefers to have a drink with their meal and their family at their table, that's what I want to do. It's kind of like a fine dining establishment. So it's a diner today. I'd like to move it forward. I'd like to improve it as a modern diner in the future.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I have one, Paul.
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at your application here. You live in Toledo?
Yes, sir.
You don't even live in Bedford?
Toledo, Ohio. Yes, sir. In Toledo. Yes,
Okay.
in Bedford. When I came in, I bought my mama house. When I retired, came in, bought my mama house in Toledo and moved in with her. And then I bought another house for me in Sylvania, Ohio too. So my address still in Toledo. My
Okay.
permanent address still in Toledo.
Okay.
But you never know if I'm going to move up to Smith Road or not. That's going to be my plan next.
Okay. All right. Mr. Steiner?
Just a quick question, again, from the planning department, one of the things that was pointed out was no additional information on the lease agreement timeframe for the building.
It was not due at the time of the application, but I do have a copy that it's being renewed for another 3 years. I'll be more than happy to provide it to you.
Okay. The clerk's department can get that. But
Yes. I'll stop by.
I'll take your word for it. You've got it there in writing. That okay. That's all.
Okay.
I brought it with me.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate
Well,
it.
thank you. It's an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. God bless.
Okay. Any comments from the public in regards to these? Okay. Seeing none, I look for a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close public hearing.
Second.
Okay. Motion is supportive of Mr. Bruning. Any more discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Ms. Jandisek?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Okay, discussion from board members? We've got two applications in front of us.
I like the idea, actually, and I wasn't aware of this until Mr. Goldsmith and Ms. Hirschberger brought it up. But both of them can come out ahead tonight. One does want beer and wine, but maybe spirits later, so they can get that potentially without our approval. In the taco shop, if we're granted, they would have their liquor license, so they both could actually potentially come out of this with some type of license.
Mm-hmm.
So my thought would be to lean more towards the taco shop.
Okay, any more discussion?
Rick.
Mr. Steiner?
I guess, of course, one of the things too is, I mean, Joe makes a good point, and you could have really almost a win-win situation here. Nobody's actually going to lose if you did that. I guess the biggest thing is if we did go toward the taco shop, then we've got to make sure that all the T's are crossed, I's are dotted, for any kind of restrictions that we would have to add to it. I mean, the liquor control, again, they're ultimately going to say it, and who knows, the liquor control could come back and say, sorry, you're within 500 feet or less, so they could still say no. But again, that's up to, if we go that route, what stipulations do we put in to bring the building at least into a certain code so they can operate
Or they find out it's not workable, busting a hole through the wall and
Correct.
getting to the next
I mean,
facility. to
Somebody
use the
could tell them it's going to
bathrooms.
cost you $500,000 to bust a hole through and do everything. I mean, they could say, forget it. So,
So, I think, yeah, we need to put something in place to where it doesn't, last time our liquor license was tied up for a long time. So.
so we
I
have a
would-
time frame. If it doesn't happen, they either have to act on it or it comes back.
Yeah, and I would think to find out whether or not it's an option.
Exactly.
Could be obtained fairly quick.
I mean, who knows that? They may be able to find out within 2-3 months, say it's not an option, then
Yeah, you get an architect over there and show them what you have to do to, comply, and I would think they could draw something up or look at it pretty quick.
How long was this liquor license held up?
A year and a half almost,
oh, at least.
almost 2 years.
I was thinking it was longer than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could put
Actually,
stipulations on
they
it so
probably
we
got
get
it
it back.
90
But
fast.
out of that, we gave them 18 months to complete the building, so you have to go after the 18 months. How long was it held up? I'm not sure, at least I think a year. But it was during COVID.
Yeah, it went longer because of COVID and the ability of that corporate entity to renovate that building was substantially negatively impacted because of COVID. Contractors, material, and then their financing was, I think, impacted by that as well. So it went longer because I think the township acted in good faith. You gave them an opportunity to perform. And you're not required, this ordinance does not require you to adopt a resolution offering it to someone pending liquor control approval. And what I would like you to do, I don't want to make it more burdensome than it needs to be, but I think it's important. I'd like you to look at your ordinance, and whoever makes a motion, if you're inclined to do that, to adopt a resolution in favor of one of these two applicants, to just go down the list, and because it gives factors that you should consider when adopting a resolution to approve a license in favor of an applicant. So, for instance, the first point on page 1 of the newly amended ordinance talks about substantial improvement of existing establishments, which will constitute a distinct benefit to the township and its residents. So, if this applicant fills that
I think it does.
category, then you move on to the next one, which talks about proposing use of the license or permits in locations the township seeks to develop or redevelop. That's point 2. Point 3 is provide a dining atmosphere in which meals are prepared and consumed on the premises. Seems that both of them seem to check that box. Next one is applicants who own or have a long-term lease in the facilities and present a facilities plan that the township board deems a benefit to the township. And then last, will not adversely impact the surrounding neighborhood, including but not limited to residential and commercial areas. So quite frankly, I think both applicants check all those boxes, but based on what you believe to be in the best interest of the township, if you would make that part of your motion, which would be incorporated into a resolution that would ultimately make its way to the Liquor Control Commission, would be, in my opinion, would be preferable. And then, as Mr. Steiner indicated, if you're going to put some time limits as reasonable conditions, do that. So I just made your work harder, but I think we should do that to fulfill our ordinance. Okay?
Should the timeline be, and I was trying to remember what the stipulation was for Jeff LLC when that was in, whenever that was, to 18 or 19. If the timeline is, it's not on completion of construction, I believe it was more on like processes moving forward, because you're going to have the design and all of the figuring that they're going to have to do that are starting at square one. Do you put a shorter timeline on it and have it be again, in good faith that you're moving forward as opposed to it's got to be done in this many months.
Well, technically, he's, you know, out of compliance as he is right now, as he's sitting right now, with the number of seats,
Even without the license.
even without it.
Yeah.
So
I don't know
mean,
what you're saying.
With
What do you mean?
With the moving the wall and what they did to add its seats,
No?
okay, it made them to where they have to have 2 bathrooms.
Okay.
He has one.
So he
That
had
was
one.
done prior to
So
him
there
owning
wasn't
it
a
and
permit pulled or anything like that to do that.
That was prior to them.
That was
doing it.
prior, you know. So I'm saying,
Or renting.
how are you going to give her a liquor license for a place right now when they technically, you know what I mean, have to have 2 bathrooms right now to operate?
I don't see how that answers my question. The question is like, where do you put the timeline on? Completion?
Whatever
That's
the
what we
board
did
wants,
last
I would
time.
say.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Completion.
Was it? That's what I couldn't remember. Was it
Yeah.
upon like it was looking
Completion.
for being completed in a certain timeline as opposed to because, yeah, they were running around with an architect for however long that was. That they weren't even moving really, and that's what I couldn't remember. It was on completion. Okay,
Yes.
Mr. Stein.
So it was on completion because that was a startup business.
from nothing. Yeah.
From nothing was there, and they could not get a license from liquor control until they were complete. And so the inspector could come down, inspect the facility, make sure there was a lease or ownership in place. So they were starting from scratch. This is a little different for both of these applicants. They have a business, it's up and running. Both of them have proposed to make some modifications. So if you were inclined to go with adopt a resolution in favor of the first applicant who spoke tonight, then you should address having a facility that is complete, up to date, and fully compliant. Now, if you want to do that with the fully expanded facility, you can do that and make that a condition. Or if you want to separate it and say that the existing facility, once it is fully compliant, would be able to serve alcohol, subject to liquor control approval. You could do that, but then make it a condition that the renovations to the newly expanded part of the facility has to be completed by a certain date. If you're uncomfortable with that, and you think, boy, that would cause maybe a problem by approving a license and and then not getting the expansion done in a timely manner, how do you come back and tell liquor control to take it away? Then say, okay, you're eligible for this license when the newly expanded facility is completely 100% complete, can be reviewed by liquor control, and go from there. I think you could do it either way. There's some risk in doing it by saying, okay, get the existing facility compliant, and then you have X number of days, months, or a year to finish the second one. It's hard to take something back once you give it.
We've done it
So,
before.
Yeah, but that's what my thought was, is, you know, to possibly pick who we want to give it to tonight and who we want to work with, and then, you know, say it is, you know, Eggy. Is that how you pronounce it right? Eggy? That's what I thought. Okay. You know, you could always table it and say, hey, find out if it's logistically an option for you to get this done. And then if it is, then we come back and we can give it contingent upon what we want to put it upon. But if they come back in a month and it's like, can't put a second bathroom in the existing, ADA won't allow, you know what I mean? They come back with find out it's very difficult to get done, then we don't have it out there with any contingencies.
And that's where I was going to go. Paul, you hit where I was going to head there. I mean, you could say that the main facility has to be brought into compliance with the ADA, bathroom, et cetera. Okay, that's your contingency. Let us know if you can, within 3 months or so, to do a bathroom. I would think 3 months might be doable for a bathroom in the current facility. Again, I'm not a construction expert, but, you know, that's something to consider. And then we say, okay, you could operate in that facility. But you have to come back, though, with a contingency.
If they probably put a bathroom in the current facility, they'd bring the number down and they wouldn't even be required to have a second bathroom.
Well, but then you lose revenue, too. So.
Yeah.
If you're inclined what I hear from you as a board, not to be presumptuous, but what I hear from you as a board is you like the Stearns and Jackman location. That checks the boxes according to the ordinance. So why don't you invite the applicant and the attorney back and ask them? Because I think they probably, don't know, haven't asked them, but I think they probably have done some homework to know whether they can do it. Is it affordable? They have a written option agreement in place, and how long it will take. And if they say yes, 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 just make a time and adopt a resolution and say, thou shalt be done by this date. When you're done by this date, liquor control, you can inspect and approve. That's one way to handle it.
So in other words, our stipulation doesn't let liquor control come until it's ready for inspection.
So
Is the board in favor of that? I mean, we haven't only heard from two people that.
I'm for the taco shop.
Okay, Rick. I mean, is that the direction you're leaning as well?
Sort of that way. Again, like I said, if that's the direction we go, then we need to look at the compliance issue and set a date.
Correct?
Yeah. And I have no problem with doing it with contingencies similar to the last one. I know you take the risk, but I mean, you take the risk.
Invite them
it's easy.
back up to the podium and ask
yeah.
them if they've considered these factors that you've been discussing, and the time they would need to build this out and be ready to go and be inspected by liquor control.
You guys want to come back up?
Might as well do it.
The problem is this could tie you up from having alcohol sales for another year or so, at a minimum.
I guess our initial thought would be, I like the idea of bringing the current space up to code. And if that means it's up to code until the entire build-out's done, and then we have to include some renovations to the original space after the fact, because we added a bathroom to operate for during the construction phase upstairs, so be it. But I think there's a great value to the applicant to be able to add the bathroom facilities, get it up to code. And I've been over there. I met with Dennis over there. Not that Dennis and I solved the world's problems in that taco shop with regard to that bathroom, but I think we both agree there's enough space adjacent to the existing facility that we think that we can provide an ADA compliant restroom to give it to. We have not sought out a contractor to give us a quote on that, but having the benefit of sitting next to an architect at this meeting, I can tell you that we're going to need about 3 months to get the assessment done for the expandable space, and about 12 months to get the construction project complete for the new space. We'd like to get the current space up to snuff right away and get the license in place for the existing space so that we can do all of the things with the 3-month assessment and get back and get the construction phase going. But we do think it's going to take up to 12 months for the construction of the new space.
Mr. Supervisor, I have a question for Mr. Bruskel. I'm going to put him on the spot. With that being said, would you, on behalf of your client and your client, agree orally here tonight and in writing that you would surrender the license to liquor control if the build-out of the expanded area was not completed within 12 months? In other words, you're asking the board to allow them to allow your client to open in the existing space once it's brought into full compliance. What I'm concerned about is if your client doesn't follow through. I have no reason to believe that they would not, but I've been doing this long enough to know that sometimes things happen and that occurs, and that kind of puts the township in a pickle because, in part, they would resolve to award this license to your client based upon the representation that there would be a build-out, the facility would be expanded, it would be a benefit to the township and its residents in that fashion. So I'm putting you on the spot because I think they need to know if they were going to allow you to open subject to liquor control approval in the existing space once that's brought into full compliance, would you agree to surrender the license if the build out didn't occur within a specific finite time period? That protects the township and the integrity of their decision if they so move, and it gives your client an advantage to move forward immediately. So I just don't want to be in the spot where you or another legal advocate would be saying, you gave us the license, you can't take it away, unforeseen circumstances occurred, we can't build it out, and sorry about your luck.
I do have a quick follow-up to that, Phil, real quick. So 12 months, I understand we need to put a time frame and contingents and things like that, but I don't want to saddle them with 12 months with what's going on right now, supply chain issues, finding contractors, plumbers, everything like that. That could be a nightmare in itself.
Reasonable time.
A reasonable time, whereas the previous, like Mr. Montre brought up, I think you gave the person or the company that held this liquor license prior, you gave him 18 months. I think that might be a little bit.
Well,
or did I
we gave an
misunderstand
extension.
that? You gave
We
an
gave them an extension.
I
But
might have a
you need,
compromise that you might like.
go ahead.
If I may, it might make sense to give us the 12 months and then to bring us back in front of the board to evaluate the progress, knowing that at 12 months, if reasonable progress hasn't been made according to your sole judgment, that you guys can revoke it, and we'd put that in writing. But we'd like an opportunity to plead our case in the event that we're 2 weeks behind schedule and we've put in hundreds of thousands of dollars and you guys are going to yank a license out from under us over that. We think we deserve the due process to say, hey, here's where we're at. Do you guys think we've made reasonable progress? I think that's a fair way of handling this. It gives you guys the ultimate say. You guys are going to vote on it. We agree to let you to vote on it and revoke it if you think that the progress hasn't been sufficient, but give us the 12 months to make the progress and then show you that we're serious about it. But the automatic revocation or yanking it out at a date certain, I think, seems a little too strict. And I'd ask for this more back and forth process where we're actually evaluating what actually takes place after 12 months and not just saying you don't have a certificate of occupancy, you're gone. So that would be my offer of compromise.
Mr. Supervisor, I have a response before we agree to that. This board does not have the power to unilaterally revoke a license. You can make a recommendation to liquor control. So I like my suggestion that they voluntarily surrender the license at a time certain if they're not complete with their build out. Now, if 12 months is too tight, talk about it right now and give them an extra time. Whatever that might be, whatever is in your best
It depends on what they have to do in there too, Joe. I mean, if they got to go in there and put LVT down and paint some walls and fix up a bathroom, I mean, you're talking they probably have somebody do it in a couple months. But if you're talking major structural repairs, I mean, it could be a lot longer.
Well, and that's why I like the idea. Okay, 12 months review with the potential for maybe a 3-month extension. Is that something that could be put?
It doesn't sound like it is because of the liquor control situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you can pull a permit and build a house in 6 months.
So we just have to
It's
pick
just
a date. We have to pick a time instead of.
make it long enough to give them time to do it in recognition of what's already been talked about here tonight: supply chain issues, contractor issues, cost of building supplies is out of this world right now. Some of it has doubled, tripled, and quadrupled. So that all needs to be taken into consideration in terms of their build out. So if we're going to operate on a finite time frame, I want it in the record that they'll voluntarily relinquish the license if they don't do what they say they will do. You can build into that some additional time if they can make a case that they were unable to do it within that certain time frame. But I don't want it in the record that we will revoke it because we don't have the authority to revoke it. All we can do is make a recommendation, and that's what we did with the prior prior license applicant, and they finally reached the realization that because of circumstances really beyond their control, they just couldn't do it. And so they voluntarily withdrew their application, and then liquor control said, okay, you're back in charge, hold your public hearing and decide what you want to do.
How many years has it been since it's been occupied?
The expanded space?
Yeah.
I don't know. The big, not the existing
School.
Not the
You're talking
existing,
about
the
the
school,
actual
yeah, because I think it's been a heck of a long time.
Been a while.
The main school building. Yeah.
Yeah.
How long's it been empty? There's been, well, there's an insurance company. I don't know exactly what has been occupying that space, but there was a tenant in there. I walked through with a landlord representative within the last 2 months, and he indicated that somebody had just vacated the space,
Okay.
but not fully occupied. I think,
Yeah.
like I said, there's a bunch of choppy rooms in there. I think someone was occupying just 1 or 2 of those as an office type space.
Yeah, because you might find out structurally moving walls might not work in there too, so. Mr. Steiner?
Phil made a good point. If we're going to do this, we've got to be reasonable. We do need to have a solid date, because we could go the other hand and say he could have all good intentions and get 7, 8 months down the road and say, you know what, I don't have the money. And when that 12-month period comes, or whatever we select, he's done nothing because he doesn't have the money. Then at that point, they would have to agree to what Phil said, is to relinquish at that point, without having to go through, come to the board, let's see if we can get an extension for 2, 3, 4 months. There's been no activity for the last 6 months. It's cut and dry. You must relinquish it based on the agreement. So I think if we're going to do it, a fair time frame, take into consideration all the supply chain constraints today. I'm thinking 14 months, but
I'm fine with 18 if you want to give him 18.
we need,
I'm remodeling my house right now, and I'm going through, windows are 4 to 6 weeks out, everything.
Mm-hmm.
So everything and costs are through
And
the
there's-
roof.
Yeah.
There's
Speak up.
nothing you can do you can't put it reasonable effort if there's not been reasonable effort by 12 and completion by 18. Can you do something along those lines?
Can-
Why
you
don't we
can-
just do 14?
Yeah,
It's a
I'm fine
compromise,
with
14.
14, I'm okay.
Now, what happens if they got 2 months left and they're almost there? You hit 14 months and they're like, "Hey, we're there." What happens then?
They come to this board before the 14 months.
correct.
They would know within 12
Okay.
months if they're going to hit that
And maybe, if I
timeline.
may, I think one of the things that we're forgetting is that if we agree to surrender this license, it just goes back to you guys, and we'll have the opportunity to reapply with a 14 months worth of construction if we fall short by a month. I think the board would have a tough sell on your own consciences to know that we've got $300,000 and 14 months into it, and we fell a month short, not to issue it to the previous applicant who had it but fell short. So-
You know the board's not going to do
Yeah,
that.
and I feel comfortable with that, but I don't think that.
I want
we're willing
the
surrender
board
if
to
it
be
needs happen,
protected.
But we just need the time.
Yeah, Tony, I want the board to be protected, that this license comes back to the township board for reissuance, and it's not sold on the open market if circumstances that are currently unforeseen to you and or your client occur. I think the board likes your client's application. I think from what I hear, they're willing to move forward with it. I've suggested this as an alternative to protect both parties, and we're kind of gun shy because this just happened, where the situation sounded great, and it was in an area where we wanted to promote economic development, and then it fell through. And the only reason we got it back is because the license hadn't been issued because the facility wasn't done. In your case, the facility will be done on a smaller scale. It'll be inspected. Liquor Control issues the license. That's why I'm suggesting this kind of out-of-the-box agreement, both orally and in writing, so that we all know how we're operating.
Are finances in place to be able to do a build-out like this?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's not. I don't believe it's going to be a financed project. So.
Okay.
And I think my client is comfortable with a 14-month timetable and a surrendering of the license if it doesn't happen, and orally in writing everything that your counsel is advising you to do, knowing that, I'll go on the record to state that we'd ask for your consideration that for some reason we fall narrowly short, we're going to be the first applicant to submit for the new available license if it has to be posted under the ordinance again.
Somebody
And I
prepare-
don't think that would happen. If you're 30 days from completion and you've invested all that money, this board's not going to act in that fashion.
No.
They never have, and I doubt seriously that they ever will.
Yeah, we're happy with these terms.
And in that time frame, this board will still be here.
I think that's a good thing.
Somebody prepared to make a motion?
Need about a week
Yeah.
to prepare this motion.
We
I'll
might,
accept Phil's friendly amendment.
Yeah, exactly.
This will be a motion that really will be put in the form of a resolution to be transmitted to liquor control, but I'm going to nominate Rick to do it because I think he's got a handle on what needs to be done.
wow.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
What was my motion?
Say section 3.
Just start talking. We'll
Ramp me, ramp you.
friendly
I'll
amendment.
put some friendly amendments in it.
Yeah. So, since Mr. Goldsmith delightfully nominated me, I will delightfully request his input during this process.
You can request the input of Madam Clerk too, because I think she's got some good ideas.
That's fine, but I'm putting you on the spot, sir.
Okay, go ahead. I'm ready.
I'm going to make the motion to adopt a resolution to award the Bedford Township liquor license recommendation to the state of Michigan for the applicant Mi Ranchito Taco Shop LLC at 1675 West Stearns Road, Suite 5. First notice is that they have met all of the application items as presented in the current liquor application process. They have provided all documentation, including lease documentation. They have shown us their plan of operation, which is supposed to be 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. Friday and Saturday. I'm sorry, that's their current. So what they've requested is 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, and then 11 to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday. There is plenty of parking to facilitate the expansion. Am I going slow enough, Trudy?
You're fine.
Okay. The proposed expansion into the adjacent building, which is a former schoolhouse, is part of a contingency within this proposal that this township will put a stipulation on that we will give 14 months for the completion of construction within the existing structure of the schoolhouse. The applicant will also, within reasonable time frame, basically immediately as soon as possible, before they can obtain the license, to have the bathroom and plumbing brought up to code in the existing facility, so they will have 2 bathrooms per the code as identified by building official Dennis Kohler. Excuse me. The 14-month time frame, I'll defer to Madam Clerk. Is that officially tonight or from the publishing of approved document?
I would say from the signing of the resolution.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
so the 14 months will begin at the signing of the actual resolution, whether that be next week or the week after. The applicant has already verbally agreed through his attorney, Mr. Breskel, that if they are not in compliance within the 14 months, that they will relinquish willingly the license, which would then come back to the township. If the township at that point sees that there has been progress, they will not attempt to put the application, I should say the actual liquor license, will not attempt to put that back up for new applicants. The only way that that would take place is if the current applicant showed zero progress and had no intentions of completing the project. Therefore, it would be revoked and the township would have all means available to put the license back up for application.
Not revoked, but voluntarily surrendered.
Voluntarily surrendered.
By the applicant. At the point in time it is determined that they will not be able to complete build-out renovations at the 14-month point, or a reasonable extension that the board might grant them at that time.
I'll take his. Go ahead.
I'll take that.
You were doing so good.
I was trying to talk slow for everybody. I didn't want to confuse myself.
That's good. I'm an attorney. Talk slow.
Yeah, because they talk fast. Have I missed anything, Mr. Goldsmith?
The wherebys of the 5 points, correct?
I would like,
in the beginning.
yeah, I think you did that in the beginning by addressing the ordinance, and the application was complete. So I'm satisfied with those points.
Okay, so that's what I was intending without having to go individually one by one.
I think you've captured that very well.
Okay. If there's no other suggestions or friendly amendments, that is my motion.
I'll support. Okay, motion supported by Mr. Gore. Any more discussion? I just want to say that thank you both for applying. This liquor license has always been and always will be a tool for the township. And this circumstance is exactly what, in my opinion, we look for, a place that can be expanded upon and be something great for the community. And I see that happening. I've been in your place multiple times. You guys do a great job, and I look forward to the expansion of it, and I'm sure the community will. So.
One last thing, I would like to say to Mr. Moose, please go out there and look to see if you can get that beer and wine license without any our
Those are
involvement.
abundant.
And so everybody's got
Like I said, that's why one applicant backed out.
Yeah.
Because that's all they wanted to do. So, okay, no more discussion. Could you call the roll, please?
I was going to add that.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Ms. Jandisek?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Okay, item 2, approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda is submitted.
Support.
Okay, motion in support of Ms. Januzak. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Jandisek?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Item 3 is the consent agenda. The agenda committee recommends to approve and place on file A, minutes of the April 19th, 2022 regular meeting of the Bedford Township Board. B, minutes of the April 19th, 2022 closed session meeting of the Bedford Township Board. C, the resignation of James Konasecker and John Bills from the Bedford Fire Department, effective immediately.
Motion to approve the consent agenda is submitted.
Support.
Okay, motion in support of Ms. Januzak. Discussion? Okay. Could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Jandisek?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Number 5, public comment. Comments limited to 5 minutes for board agenda items only. Okay, seeing none, move it.
Nope, here it comes.
Good evening. Dennis Butch, 6271 Benore Road, Erie. I'm going to touch on briefly on 3C and 8B. I'm back. You guys have decided to replace the former Fire Chief Massengill from within. Apparently that's what we're doing now. To me, that makes the aroma of a cover-up of the improprieties of the last chief really, really acrid. I'm going to continue to urge the public to never vote for another millage for that fire department again until an independent investigation is conducted and transparency is afforded, afforded to the taxpayers regarding the multiple misconducts of the former fire chief. Wave after wave of resignation, as evidenced by more tonight. A drug addict hired when he was already way searching for a new job. A position created just for his benefit that now no longer exists. Affairs, lawsuits threatened. It's quite clear that the board did not do its due diligence before handing him a multi-million-dollar budget, despite his long trail of bankruptcies and financial mismanagement that he drug behind him. You were made aware of his predatory advances on subordinates, that he was cheating on his wife, having sexual relations in our fire stations. He lied right to your faces in a board meeting about living on a vacant lot while squatting at the fire station, and now he's publicly flaunting purchase of new homes in other states, as actually back in 2021. I don't care if he was your fireball drinking golf buddy, doesn't matter. Impropriety took place, and all of you are only hurting yourselves and this township by trying to cover all of it up. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to keep coming back just to remind you that there are plenty of us still waiting, week after week, for you to address the issues publicly. Let the public know that you're doing something looking into those misconducts. We don't need politicians in this township. What we need is people that are going to stand up for the right thing and not just try to cover their own tails. Have a good night.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments?
Josh Neener, course 7940 Wiseman Road, Lambertville. I want to comment about the fire chief situation too. So at the last meeting, it was approved to hire people from within the fire department, but yet someone also said that there's nobody currently on the roster that's actually qualified for the job. So why was that time wasted versus possibly looking to somebody who lives within the township that is qualified, that somebody else mentioned about, that is interested in the job, or even just going to the firm? Honestly, it's been like about 2 months now since the chief resigned. If you were going to look through within the house, the time to do that was up on the time he resigned. And at the same time, is there anything with the investigation going on, possibly with everything that's happened? I mean, us taxpayers, including me, have a right to know what all happened and what's going to be done about it as far as any discipline or any other legal action. So I just ask that something gets done within a reasonable time, and then figure out what we're doing with the whole chief thing, and look into somebody who's either in there, is interested in the job, live in the township or not, and just quit playing around. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Would you like to address the fire chief situation so people stop wasting their time and think that we're going to be spending time on something that we're not spending time on or money?
I'll address it. I don't know if it's going to satisfy anybody, but I'll
we can
address
at least
it.
let the public know, and we do have qualified people within, just for the record.
So that fire chief resigned. He's no longer here. There's nothing this board can do in terms of discipline with respect to the former fire chief. He is no longer our employee. He is someone else's employee. In terms of whether or not any improprieties occurred, I am confident that if anything is discovered by our by our elected officials or by our finance manager, that appropriate steps would be taken to address them. To date, to my knowledge, nothing has been discovered that would require anything to be done. And so he is no longer here. I've said it before. He's not our problem. He is someone else's problem, to the extent that he ever was a problem. And that really sums it up. There's nothing for this board to do unless something comes up during the administration of the township that would warrant further investigation. There's nothing to be done at this point in time. He is no longer here. He voluntarily resigned. We accepted his resignation. That's it. Nothing. We're not playing around. I kind of resent those terms in terms of selecting a new fire chief. We're taking measured time to do that. I believe in my heart that two very qualified individuals within our department have been appointed. They're here tonight, and they're running the department, and they're doing a fine job of it, and they'll continue to do that on an interim basis until this board makes a measured decision who the next fire chief should be. No decision has been made regarding whether or not a current firefighter within this department will be appointed chief. That may or may not occur. The process, this board is determined to go through that process. I'm confident that you'll do that in a very, very professional manner. If someone rises to the top and you believe that that person, whoever it might be within the department, is qualified to lead this department, you'll make the right decision. If that doesn't happen, then you'll advertise. In the meantime, we have two very qualified people running this department, and I believe that. I would select either one of them if it were up to me. It's not, to run this department on a full-time basis. It just so happens that neither of them, I think at this time, have thrown their hat in the ring. See, you got me started.
So, again, but we do have three running it.
Okay.
And doing a very fine job. I don't know
Okay.
what the third one.
I stand corrected.
I just wanted you to say that and just move on. Move on. There's so many other good things going on in this community.
Nothing is being covered up. I don't know where that comes from. It's unfortunate that that's being said. Nothing is being covered up. If it is ever determined that something improper was done, then that will be addressed.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. Frederick.
Lamar Frederick, 3254 Deer Creek Drive, and I don't want to be number 4. Not interested in that job. I have a couple comments. I was listening intently as to how you were going to grant this liquor license. And I applaud Mr. Goldsmith and poor Mr. Steiner trying to write the motion. We've been through this once before where, well, it was 12 months and 18 months and then something else. My only question is that this particular facility has had a number of businesses prior to this one, and they all failed. I hope these folks have a menu that is a little bit different from the one just a mile up the road, because that's a strong competitor, Magdalena's. And Mr. Goldsmith, when you write this document that you're going to have this lawyer look at and the client sign, what happens if they just close their door and walk away? Will the so-called 12, 14-month trigger automatically return it back? Or will they have to do some action to turn it back? Because I don't know the answer to that.
They would have to voluntarily relinquish it, and the document.
And of course, if they file Chapter 11, Chapter 7, you're done, because the automatic stay comes into place, and you can't go after the license. Lastly, C&D under 8, new business. An awful lot of change orders come on this job, and while I know Mr. Jacobs here is a pretty good architect and engineer, I'm really concerned that there was not enough study of the building to begin with electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, civil engineers looking at the electrical distribution system. But, we're at the point now where we got to finish it up. But there's an awful lot of change orders that have come along, and you're getting pretty close to what the original budget was. So I'm just commenting that it looks like a lot of change orders. So in any event, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Have a great night. Anybody else? Okay, moving on to 7A, approve Consumers Energy Agreement and payment for modifications of electric facilities at Fire Station 2. So I did get a hold of the appropriate people that I thought could help out with the situation, and when I finally did, I called Mr. Goldsmith and put him on speakerphone. That way he could hear the conversation. So I'm going to let you speak to it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Supervisor. We did, Paul and I did have a conversation with the Consumers Energy representative. I was pretty adamant at the last meeting that we should reach out to them and try to obtain some sort of a discount because this is for public safety. Unfortunately, they do not have a program, and we're firm in their conviction that we would have to pay the full price as an end user for this upgraded electrical service because it doesn't exist now. It's being implemented solely for our purpose at the what I refer to as the Lambertville Fire Station. And we leaned on them, but they, the representative, and I think she was the right representative to talk to, is her name Miss Black. Do I have that correct, Paul?
Yeah, Stephanie Black.
Stephanie Black. There may be the opportunity for some discounts down the line if other users were to need that type of service that's needed at the Lambertville Fire Station. But right now, despite our best efforts, we were not able to obtain a reduction in price or a cost sharing ratio. So I thought it was worth a try. We tried, and so we struck out.
Okay. So we need approval to move forward. Any comments?
Yeah, this one bothers me.
Bothers me too.
We're paying to replace their antiquated equipment, but yet
Technically, no, because it was doing its job and servicing the residents. We asked for it.
it needs to be up.
We needed the upgrade
We
in
needed
service that is not needed by the residents.
Now, if
in
they
that
would have
area.
come and said, "Hey, you need," it'd have been a different story. But with our build that we did and we asked for it, that's when it triggered our cost.
It bothers me from the standpoint that it is solely for public safety. That's why we need it. Yeah. That is a public safety facility, and I thought Consumers Energy would at least entertain a cost-sharing approach with us, but they declined to do so.
I'm sure they did.
Okay, I look for a motion.
I make a motion, we approve Consumers Energy Agreement and payment for the modifications of electric facilities at Fire Station 2.
I'll support in the amount of $60,431 for a friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment accepted.
Okay, motion is supported by Peroni. Any more discussion? Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye.
Ms. Jandisek?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
No.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye.
Okay, the motion passed 6-1. Item 8A, vouchers for payment. Ms. Hirschberger?
I'd like to make a motion that the following vouchers be approved for payment. General Fund, $181,439.83. Fire District, $14,719.73. Police Fund, $4,402.28. Park Operating, $1,536.48. Fire Equipment, $30,036.82. Library Operating, $5,056.70. DDA, $12,490.71. Sewer O&M, $2,674.54. Trust and Agency, $730.50, for a grand total of $253,087.59.
Support.
Okay, motion in support of Ms. Janizek. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Hirschberger votes aye. Ms. Jandisek?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Item 8B, approve qualifications for fire chief position and job posting. Ms. Hirschberger?
So I went ahead and I took the last posting that we used and I tweaked it a little bit to fit this one. I did add the bottom, candidates please note, that gives us permission to run all the background checks that we want to run. So that's pretty straightforward on the front. The job description is the job description we used not this last time, but 2 times before this. So I went ahead and I sent it to Kurt, Kathy, and Doug, had them tweak it. They added what they thought should be in here, and this is the final copy.
Mr. Steiner?
I'm fine with the additions and everything. Just a couple notes here. Page 2, the last part of paragraph B, term of appointment. I just would like to see it be a little more clear. It says the fire chief reports to the township personnel committee. I think we should add for day-to-day operations, but ultimately reports to the entire township board. The second item suggestion would just be number 18 on the last page, that it's required that the chief provides weekly briefings / reports as we've been getting over the last 5 years.
You're adding 18?
Yes.
Okay.
That's just a suggestion that because it's a big help for us to at least know what's going on a regular basis. I mean, it doesn't have to be a 27-page report. It's just a quick briefing of what's taken place. It's basically a recap from the previous week, as we've been getting. That's all I have for my recommendations out of there.
Mr. Montre? Anything? Anybody else have anything? Okay. And we do have the time frame in here, the time we post it to the firemen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be submitted to us or to my department by May 31st.
Okay. All right.
That was based on us approving it tonight.
Okay. Any more discussion? I look for a motion.
Well, Ms. Hirschberger, do you want to do it or I'll do it?
That's fine. Go ahead.
I'll make the motion to approve the scope of job qualifications for the Bedford Township Fire Chief as presented with the 2 recommended amendments.
I'll second.
Okay, motion in support of Ms. Hirschberger. Any more discussion? I just want to say we wouldn't be going through this process and going in-house first if there weren't qualified candidates. So, other than that,
Can I just
Mr.
say
Steiner?
that?
Oh.
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say, so everybody understands, the process was already approved at the last meeting. This is nothing more than to publish the actual scope. So
correct.
There's no process changes tonight. That was approved at the last meeting.
No. The only thing I was going to add is if for some reason we don't find an internal candidate, we can always come back and maybe do Bedford Township the next time. And if we don't find someone there, then we would hire the company and go outside. So I don't want everybody to think this is it, we're done. It can go further than this if we need to.
Is that a friendly amendment?
Well,
I was just
wouldn't make
letting people know
I would
how
say
the
if this doesn't work
process-
out, we go to our second option, which is hire the firm and bring somebody in. But okay, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Ms. Janasek?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
No.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Proney?
Aye, the motion passed 6-1. Okay, item 8C, approve change order number 10, Van Tassel Corporation for the renovations to Fire Station 2.
Good evening, Chair and Board. Item number C with the change order number 10 for Van Tassel is related to change order number 1, scope of work. This is the item that was unable to be priced at that time. This was for the asphalt repair, which was to come in the spring when they could price it with current conditions. So that's what 10 is all about. So that is to complete that. And with that, that project will be complete for Van Tassel's full scope. The only remaining item for completion that's of any significance is the completion of the electrical changeover, which we're holding funds for from the electrical portion of their contract to make sure that that gets executed once the power is in place.
Okay. Any comments? Okay, I look for a motion.
What's the roof situation?
Hmm?
That's for the roof. Was that you said there's nothing more of significance?
That the roof will not be part of any further work on the roofs. Will not be part of Van Tassel's scope of work.
Okay.
They could be a potential bidder in that work when we put it back out.
Okay.
I look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve change order number 10 from Van Tassel Corporation for the renovations to Fire Station 2 in the amount of $1,675.13.
Support.
Okay, support of Mr. Bruning. Discussion. I just want to say that I've heard nothing but great things from Van Tassel's job performance, everything that they've had going on in there, any things that they've had to come back and fix. And, you know, they've taken care of. They've been great to work with, from what I've heard. So,
I can expand on that before we move to the next item, but you'll have an opportunity. Mr. Montry approached me before the meeting to see when we could schedule a time to come out there in an evening or on a weekend. So if you can get together, give me a date. We'll make that happen, and you can see firsthand the work that's been done. But they've been an excellent partner, going above and beyond. For an example of that, during the move-in, when the firefighters were placing their furniture back in the rooms, several walls were scratched and scuffed. That's not a responsibility of the contractor to come back and fix. They did it without question. They just came back and took care of that. And there were several other items that were above the contract that they took care of. So in all through the process, they have been good to work with in that regard. Subcontractors, they controlled those well. So our experience with them has been good. And hopefully you'll see the same thing when you come out to look at the site.
cool. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Ms. Janasek?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Item 8D, approve change order number 3 from Border Fire Protection for the fire suppression system to Fire Station 2. Mr.
So item D for change order 3 with Border Fire Protection's work is to address a deficiency for fire rating that was above the ceiling that was modified through the changes in the Van Tassel scope of work. This is one that will be fully reimbursed, but because it's a contract between you and Border Fire Protection, that requires your change order to their contract, but it will be fully reimbursed.
Okay. Comments? Okay, look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve change order number 3 from Border Fire Protection for the fire suppression system to Fire Station 2 in the amount of $2,385. I don't know if I need to put in to be refunded by, or if I need to have that in the motion or not.
Good, won't hurt.
I'll second with
Who's
that.
reimbursing it?
To be reimbursed by Jim.
I second.
Okay, motion is supported by Mr. Steiner. Any more discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Janasek?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, item 8E, approve precision irrigation and lawn care proposal for mowing of the local roads. So Precision reached out. They still have a year left in their contract. They've been with us for a long time, with the road commission for a long time. The changes that they've had with their staff and fuel, it's very difficult for them to do, to continue mowing at the price that they're at. So I talked to him about it many times about, is the gentleman here? Oh yeah, come on up. All right, I thought you'd be here. Okay. So why don't you just explain the situation in the microphone? So.
Hi, Jay Harrington with Precision Irrigation. We have been dealing with local road mowing for your guys' township somewhere between 12 and 15 years. Typically through all the year, we do it with 10 other townships as well. As far as local roads, we now are doing, 12 of the townships' primary roads. So there's two different ways. We are directly working for the road commission on the primaries. We work for the local townships for the local roads. So you guys, under this deal that we've done, all the years that we've done this with all of the other townships, we've always been able to just do 3-year contracts. Makes it easy. Everybody can stay right where we need to go, and it's never been an issue. This year, it's mind-blowing even where our fuel prices are even getting quoted at today at this rate. So in order for us to be able to stay profitable, keep doing this and maintaining the quality of work that we're doing, we're asking you, all of the townships for that matter, the locals, to redo that contract or amend it to basically increase that extra cost of the inflation, labor, oil, all of that stuff.
And just so the board knows, they've been great to work with over the years. When there's issues, they always email us. With residents' complaint, they go back out and take care of it. They've always gone above and beyond, so they've been great to work with. How many other townships have?
So we have 10 other townships doing local roads, and now the county used to do the primaries. It was one contractor for the whole county. They've had problems in the past 2 contractors over the last few years doing the primary roads. So they decided to break them up into 3 township sections and bid them out exactly that. So we are now doing.
No, I guess I was going to ask how many actually opted into your.
So we're going to actually, out of the 10 or 11 townships local, I wanted to be able to do the primaries along with that. So we are actually doing 12 townships. So the way it worked out, there's one extra township that we don't do the local roads on.
No, how many actually opted into your contract change?
I'm sorry?
How many opted into the contract
All
change?
of them.
Okay.
So this was the last contract that was outstanding to be questioned at this point.
Comments? Question, Mr. Steiner?
Well, I'll be the first one to tell you, a contract's a contract. I get that. But I will also tell you, in the business that I'm in, and this gentleman here is not even in my business, but we used to have something in common, fuel. I monitor diesel fuel every week. This week, we had set a record high in this country of $5.51 a gallon for diesel fuel on a national average. That's almost unsurmountable. Normally you would say it's contract, it's contract. You put it out there. But
I did, just so you know, I did say that. I called him and I told him we're in a contract.
I get that, Paul.
So.
And then, too, it has gotten tougher and tougher, unfortunately, to hire people. When you see fast food restaurants giving $1,000 or $1,500 bonus just to get somebody to work, my gosh, he'd spend this money by hiring 3 guys if he had to do that. That'd be like us saying, okay, our sheriff's department, we pay for all the fuel. Well, now they've got probably a 40% increase in fuel costs. Tell the sheriff we're not going to do it. I don't like this and this process this way, but I'm inclined to say that we've almost got to give some kind of relief in this case. I've seen us do other things that don't really warrant like this would.
Any other comments, thoughts? Okay. I look for a motion then.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the precision irrigation and lawn care proposal for mowing of the local road ditches as presented.
I'll second. Can I make a suggested friendly amendment of accepting the rest of this year in 23, and if the inflation rate drops back to normal in 24, that 24 it's held the same as 2023, and the same thing with 2025. You know, so if the rate of inflation is only 2% and we're asking for 4% here, then I think we should consider that.
Whose inflation rate are you going to use?
Unfortunately, you pretty much have to use the government standard, which.
Well, would you guys consider, and doing the contract for this year with the, the difference, and then putting it back out for bid next year? I mean, he's doing everybody in the whole daggum county. He's probably the only one that even is able to do the work.
That's why
So I mean, you're.
My problem with bidding
no problem
it, we
as
might
presented.
shoot ourselves in the foot
Well-
as well. So.
I have no problem with it as presented. If inflation goes down, that's what I'm just, depends whose number you're using for inflation going down.
But if inflation
I don't
goes
see
down-
inflation going down.
You're not cutting wages down, more likely, either.
Yeah, not in 2 years.
I'll withdraw
They'll
the
print
friendly
more.
amendment.
We'll keep it out of it.
Okay, all right. Motion supported as submitted, and, okay, any more discussion? Let's call the roll, please. He revoked the friendly amendment to say
He's
no.
going to follow what he wrote. Right, 24 to 25 would be the same.
Just to make the record clear, based on the presentation, Jay, no increase from 24 to 25.
Correct.
Okay.
Could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
No.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Ms. Janasek?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Proney?
Aye, and the motion passed 6-1.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay. Item 8F, direction regarding Mulch King's non-compliance of amended site plan. Mr. Steiner?
I guess I don't know where to start. You've all got the packet in front of you. The last approval from Planning Commission October 13th of 2021 had requirements in it that had to be met by Tuesday, April 12th, which also included removal of all items that are not permitted to be sold on site due to the commercial retail sales of products produced from off-site are prohibited in an I-2 zoning. The second phase of approval was supposed to be June 1st for full compliance, and that included having all the major landscape installed around the perimeter of the property and all the berming and everything 100% compliant. As of today, and you see in your write-up where it said that the salt that was in the barn was not planning to be removed, the 12-foot high piles were exceeding 12 feet, and it was mentioned at the April 12 meeting that they would not be brought into compliance until sometime in August. The building structure that was installed, a permit was issued, but my question there is, how can the work be being done, because I believe there's some truss work and things that need to be added to that building, how can that be done with all the salt still inside that building? All of the landscaping, if you look at the back of your packet, you can see the entire landscape plan. There's a lot of landscape to be done in just under 4 weeks. I don't even know if that's doable. Another note here. So regarding the salt that was brought on site, the requirements were put forth in the October 13, 2021 Planning Commission meeting, but approximately 2 months after that meeting, multiple dump trucks entered that facility and delivered all of that salt to the site. I've heard that Mr. Niss is using some of that for personal use for his business, but it's very clear that it was also advertised in the Bedford Press and wherever else that he was selling to the public, which is completely prohibited in the industrial zoning, the I-2 light industrial. So I guess we're at the point of, what does this board do? We are still in a non-compliant situation. How do we proceed? Because I don't know when it's going to be brought into compliance. We've been, and I'm not attacking you, but we've been told many times before, things were going to be done, things are going to be done, things are going to be done, and they don't get done. You sent me pictures today about one of the piles that was being dropped down in height today, but yet you were visited on April 8th and April 12th, and why is it all of a sudden tonight's a board meeting and we're trying to drop the height of piles today? So I'm going to let fellow board members discuss and give their opinion on where they think we should go from here.
Let's let Mr. Nitz go ahead and kind of
I guess
update us, and then we could kind of comment.
Well, the salt issue, you did touch on it. We did. You start advertising as a business stuff way before, so I didn't know the salt was going to be an issue until October, when you guys had said we had already said we were going to sell it to different businesses and stuff. So I bought more than we would even use ourselves personally. The minute Jody came over and said, "Dude, that's one of the things that you can't sell because you don't produce it," we quit and took everything down. But we still use it for our own business. We're one of the larger snow removal providers around, so we usually use 500 tons a season. It's been a mild winter, so we didn't use that much. But you get it cheaper if you buy it in bulk. That's the whole reason that I even built the barn to begin with, that big. So that was a salt issue. If we use it as a part of our business purposes, I don't think that it should be have to be hauled off-site.
Well, to that, can you...
And you can't not take delivery of it once you pay for it, and 90% of it was already had been delivered. You can't go back on a deal, just like you were just talking about with the mowing guy. You can't go back.
Well, to that, can you fix the trusses with the salt in there?
Yeah, it's only 2 trusses added to the front that's open.
Okay.
All the other stuff, support-wise, is done. We got to add 6x6s between the posts around the outside. I was going to pour concrete instead and thought that would be better. Mr. Kohler said it says do 6x6s, so the lumber's there. Take us a day to do it, so I'm not worried about the June 1st deadline as far as that goes with him. And he said too, if you didn't have it done, he would be okay with it because he saw we did most of the work already anyways. As far as that, it's a separate building permit. It was separate from Jody's June 1st.
Got talking to the mic better.
Deal. Okay. So as far as that the building goes, the salt goes, the bushes and stuff, that's a June 1st deadline again. All the holes are dug.
Well, let's do this.
Some of you came and
let's
saw
not
the
focus
site.
on the June 1st deadline because he still has an opportunity to
Right,
take care of a
right.
lot of stuff. So let's focus on the deadline that has already been passed.
So the salt, Jody said there's 2 issues, the salt and then the brush pile had one corner of it that was too high. All the other piles were 12 feet or under.
And you took care of that, right?
And I took care of that. That's what I sent.
So
the
our
pictures
issue
of.
is salt that
So
we're
the
talking about.
salt in the barn, you need, that I use for our personal business. I won't sell it if I'm not allowed to sell it. That's
So
fine.
hold on,
Why
hold on
spend
one
all the
second.
money to
So-
haul it out if it's?
So is that allowable to hold salt for his own use for his business, knowing what he's saying now, not selling it to the public or to any businesses? Is that allowable?
Only if it's part of the approved site plan.
Okay.
He can't sell it at retail. If the site plan has been approved for salt to be stored there for his use, company use, and not for retail sale, it's a site plan issue. And I don't know, Rick, do you know if it's been approved on the site plan for salt to be deposited there?
I don't think that it was spelled out on a site plan anywhere that there was,
I don't think so.
approval for a salt barn.
So that, as Jody pointed out, that remains to be an issue. And if that's what,
But we know that for sure. We know that for sure.
We can double check that with planning very easily.
Because really, at this point, if he gets everything else done at his next deadline, we're only talking about salt right now.
But I still have an issue
Okay.
with the fact that the salt, and you said you didn't understand it, but
Well, it's been
It-
there
what-
for 4 years.
Hold-
But
hold-
been used it the whole time.
okay, but it's been very clear that you cannot sell retail from an industrial property. So you say you bought it prior to advertising for sale and everything, but you knew up front that you couldn't sell retail from the property. So you don't just go out and buy 500 ton of salt and say, oh, give me forgiveness because I was waiting till we see what happens. It was very clear in all the meetings. I mean, this has been out of compliance for 5 years. And that's the part that I struggle with. And there's been various things that have been said, and they have not been completed numerous times.
Well, here's the tough decision, though. Okay, either we continue to work with him or we shut a business down.
No, we don't shut anybody
No, I'm
down.
saying I know he's shutting himself
they
down.
shut themselves
He
down.
is shutting himself down. Okay,
Exactly.
but we have to make the motion to do that. So either we continue to work with him and continue to say, hey, we got to find out 100% about the salt, whether it's something that can be there for sure or not. But that's what the board has to decide.
Well, I'll tell you what. Can we ask Mr. Jacob? You were the architect, your firm. Do you remember exactly if that was in the submission of the site plan to approve salt storage?
With the nature of this, I would not rely on my memory for that.
Okay, so
I'm gonna go
don't
back and check.
I don't want to put you on the spot,
Yeah.
so don't worry about it. So
Plus, now Andrew's getting charged for him.
Does the salt have to be part of the site plan if the building is part of the site plan?
Yes.
I'm assuming the building is part of the site plan, is why Dennis is giving recommendations on what needs to be done to bring it into compliance. So if
He-
the
he
building
issued
is
the permit.
in,
And I guess I don't remember anybody saying like you had to name specifically what you were going to
What
put
your
in
building
a
is.
pole barn on a commercial property either. I mean, if somebody would have asked that, I could have said it, but.
but if
Well,
the building is, on, if
it
the building's on the
it all
site
comes
plan,
back to retail sales. And that was never approved except
For what?
for what is created or it becomes a product of the what occurs at that site. That was the only thing that was ever allowed. And I guess what I'll speak for the board, and they can tell me if what I'm saying is in any way inaccurate. What bothers the board is that the ordinance, when it was originally drafted, was amended. Then, and Mr. Gore can speak to this because he is the representative from this board on the Board of Zoning Appeals, numerous amendments were, or numerous variances were granted. and to, as the supervisor says, to work with you and to help you get your business up and running, profitable for you, and a benefit to the township, but to be in compliance. And what I hear is that the township is trying to put me out of business. The township doesn't work with me And nothing farther could be from the truth. Nothing farther. This township, in my opinion, has bent over backwards through amendments to ordinances, through zoning variances, through working with you at the planning commission level, helping you to understand what's permitted on the site plan, what's allowed. But yet when Jody goes out there, it appears to me from reading her report that you say, I'm not going to do that. Now, quite frankly, how do you think that makes the board members feel?
Well, I didn't say that. I just
Let me
said-
finish.
All right.
And then you can talk to them. So that's the issue. And time after time after time we've come here, and Rick's at his wit's end. Joe, they've both gone out there as representatives of the township to try to work with you. So the township has worked with you. I'm going to turn it around and say, it's time you worked with the township. It's time you come into compliance. If they're going to allow you to do that, it's time. It's way past time. Okay, now the board can take.
So with you not being able to sell salt retail, obviously you have way too much salt in the barn. I mean, you don't want a barn full of salt. I mean, how many ton do you have in there?
There's like 1,000 right now.
I mean, you have enough salt to last you.
A couple of years, 2-3 years, depending.
But I'm
on how
saying
bad
you
the
wouldn't want that in there just for your own purpose, anyways, right?
Would I want it in there?
I mean, that wasn't your main purpose, was to store salt in it, was it?
No. What I was going to do is put a divider in it and work on equipment out of the rain on one part and keep salt in the other part.
Okay. Mr. Gore?
So I've driven by the site, and Andrew did reach out to me, but with my work schedule, I could not get out there and make a site visit. But I've driven by it several times. I do see the berms up. I do see the mulches down or the wood chips. I see that the holes are dug for the shrubs or shrubbery that you're going to be planting probably soon.
George is going to come on with your mic. I'm sorry.
Am I going to get yelled at again?
You're going to get yelled at.
Okay. And I know we did agree that we had to wait for the weather to break to get that done and get that in. So I do believe that's going to happen. But my issue is like with Rick, is again, salt wasn't allowed, and you can come up here and say, oh, you won, I bought it this, bought it that. No, it was like, I'm getting it, and I'm doing what I want. All right? It is what it is. I'm tired of dealing with this. I'm tired of hearing, I'm sure somebody's going to go on one of the social media platforms and the township bullies are doing this and that and everything else, when, like Mr. Goldsmith said, we have bent over backwards and made amendments and given variances, made site visits, and so I'm ready to move forward and move on and put this to rest, one way or the other. Either we're going to work with him and we're going to hope that it comes into compliance by June 1st, or we're going to go the other route and be done with it.
So let me ask this. So what is the board, because we don't have a clear direction of the salt.
Mm-hmm.
So what does the board want to do tonight? I mean, as far as the salt, I mean,
I thought there was only one thing that was allowed to be kept there, and that was some kind of chippings or something that he could use for, or millings, that's what it was. Millings he could keep there because he was using that. But the salt had to go. Why would Jody say it in her thing that the salt had to go if it could stay there? Mm-hmm. She wouldn't have.
There was something here
I guess to me, I'd like to see it, because it's, you're talking, what if you wanted 3 ton just to salt his lot? He couldn't keep that on site? You know what I'm saying?
It would be a special request, special approval by the board. That's what it says. Everything he wants that's not created on site needs special approval.
Okay. So what is the board's pleasure with the salt? Is that something that you want to look
How
further
does Dennis
into?
inspect it with all the salt in it?
What's that?
How would Dennis inspect the building with all the salt in it?
I don't know. He's pretty good, I guess. I don't know. I mean, there ain't much to it. I mean, it's it's timber frame, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's
That's what you
I'm not.
It's not like he's checking welds on it, and
I'm not that worried about it. If he's not selling it, and it's in it's in storage.
You don't need salt right now.
Well, I'm saying, like, what do you got it? He's got it in his building. He has a use for it for his own business. Like, I don't know what do you do?
So, I mean, could something be put into
That's
place?
That's the only thing that's not in compliance is something that is being stored on the property. And said as long as it's not being sold retail, it's storage. That's how I see it. I don't see anything else out of compliance. I see one thing out of compliance, and I see it as I don't even know if it is if he's not selling it, because it's storage of something that he can use for his own business.
Yeah, but Phil, I don't know. Would we be allowed to allow him without a text amendment being changed? We would have to change.
It's got to be.
It's got to be in writing.
It's got to be part of the site plan.
So we would have to change the site plan to allow that anyways.
And Phil, also, would there be any, since it's not a completely closed, sealed building, it still can get some weather in there. Is there any issue with residual runoff and residue from eagle issues?
There could be. I mean,
And that's
we're
something
close.
else that would have to be
We're close to a
investigated.
water course, so
I'm pretty sure they'd
I don't
be
know
worried
if-
about that.
I don't know
If
if
that was
Eagle,
the case, we wouldn't need to figure
is
that
Eagle
out.
aware
They
that
would
the
be on.
salt's out there?
They may not
would
even know
be.
it's there.
They don't know
He brought
it's
it in.
He just said
He
Eagle's
just brought
aware.
it in. They don't even know it's there.
Does Eagle know salt is there?
Yeah, the Eagle's seen the salt.
Yeah, they know. Those bureau.
He's not in
Those
compliance.
departments-
It's
those
simple.
departments.
He's doing what he wants. He's not in compliance. He's not following Joe and Rick's direction. This is ridiculous.
Well, it's not Joe and Rick's direction. It's the board's
As much as
direction.
they've been helping him, he just continued. And Jody, no, I'm not getting rid of the salt. It's just ridiculous at this point.
Okay.
I have a business. I have to be in compliance. Fair is fair.
What's your pleasure?
Well, I will note in Ms. Rector's note, she put in there that the overall site layout has been brought into compliance with the amended site, but we're not all the way there yet.
So we got June 1st to get there. So we need to.
Well, the April 12th was the deadline
No,
to get everything
That's
out.
what I'm saying for the salt.
Mhm.
That's what I'm saying. We're talking about the salt. The board can say, hey, we can do something till June, but are you going to, would you even be able to get rid of 1,000 ton of salt?
No.
It would take you a pretty massive undertaking.
Yeah,
With
it'd just be too costly at the start of the year right now, too. I got all the same diesel and employee pay and all those issues you guys were just talking about with his business and Mr. Steiner's business as well. So
Can you just talk close to the mic? He's coming out. Sorry.
Sorry.
Pull the mic to you.
Yeah.
I saw the door.
No, we're screening right now. We used over 200 gallons of diesel fuel today alone just on that, and lowering the pile and doing what we needed to do to be in compliance. So there's a cost to everything, you know that.
Would you
We're not-
agree?
not-
Would you agree that you made a mistake bringing the salt out?
Well, selling it, I did, because I've been using it for years for our business in that barn, but agreeing to sell it to the guys that mow everybody's lawn and does their landscape and plows all the lots around here, that was a mistake. I agree.
So what would you suggest? Do you have a thought on the salt?
Ideally, I would say we're going to use it for our snowplow business, that if I keep it in the barn and keep it covered and take care of everything else, then why has it got to go?
It's not on the site plan. You can't have it.
So then what do? Go back and ask to put salt in a barn on the site plan and redo
not
the
my
whole
problem.
thing?
I'm not the one who brought
I'm
it in
asking
illegally.
you for what do I do? Is that what you're telling me I need to do? Then I'll go do that.
I'm still curious if what is being stored in the facility would be on the, like, would be on the site plan. If the building is on the site plan, a storage facility is on the site plan, what would be stored in it?
Mulch to keep out of the weather?
Well, I don't know that it would necessarily be.
Equipment?
Mulch equipment.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, is it, I'm saying, would it need to be specified? I don't know that it would need to be specified in a site plan if the storage facility is on the site plan, is what is being stored in the storage facility of necessity denoted on the site plan.
Well, I think when he got the building, he said it was for equipment.
So it
Andrew
says that.
said.
That's what, I guess that's what would need to be,
Yeah.
that you need to figure out.
He
If
said
it
it
says
was-
equipment building. on
That's
the site
originally
plan
what
instead
it
of
was said to
storage
be.
facility on the site plan.
Originally, it was equipment.
I did say equipment, but it was for both. Like I said, it was supposed to be half and half.
And it was constructed a couple years ago with no building permits even.
Mhm.
So,
well, what's your suggestion, Mr. Steiner? I mean, you placed it on the agenda, and I'm sure you have some sort of idea of what the.
well, I mean, I didn't place it here. It came from planning because it's time.
Okay.
I mean, I don't even know how, I mean, I guess, again, I'd have to talk to Mr. Goldsmith on guidance of, okay, so what if we say that either the salt goes or else? Then we'd have to give them, you know, I don't even want to use the word reasonable time to remove the salt because nothing's going to be reasonable for 100 or 1,000 ton of salt. Number one, there's a cost to move it. There's a cost to sell it to somebody, and who's going to want to buy it at this time of year unless they can buy it low to begin with. But on the other side of that, I'm just not willing to say, let's just let it go.
Well, at a minimum, there'd be an amendment, like he said to the, site plan. If the board is okay with him storing salt in it for his own personal use, then we would send him back.
Do you need to store it there for the business, or do you have another location where you'd be able to store it once if you used it, if it was approved to go through for use for your business? Do you have another location where you're able to store your own, or is that like the only place you have within your own properties to be able to store it if you said, okay, in 3 years or whatever it takes you to move through it personally?
We could move some, but not all. There's probably could put a couple 100 tons down at Perrysburg.
Just a thought for where you'd be able to move through it, and then if you don't need to put it in as a amendment to the site plan or whatever it may be.
No matter what, he'd have to go back because the site plan was approved and you can't do anything without changing that. So he would have to go back for a site plan amendment, and there's no guarantee the planning commission is also going to vote that through either.
Well, then he's stuck. He's got to get rid of it,
So what are we going to do? We gave him a date. He didn't move it by that date. What are we going to do? Give him a new date and say, we really, really mean it this time? I mean, that's what it's coming down to here. So, yes, there's a cost to removing it. It wasn't supposed to be there in the first place. It wasn't supposed to be sold at retail. I don't know what business Mr. Nitz is talking about using it. Is it one of his other businesses? Is it a wholly owned subsidiary? What's happening here tonight is we're working with him, but he's not working with us.
You know what? It's
And
time.
that's
It's
what's-
time to put a padlock on the gate. Let's do it. I'm done. I'm done dealing with it. It's been too long. I know social media is going to blow up. I know somebody's going to go out there and say, oh, Mr. Gore said this or that or whatever. But as you stated, we've been over backwards in the 2 years that I've been on the board almost. I'm done with it. So do we need a motion?
So we have to be careful because he is out of compliance right now. He has a date in the future to bring other aspects into compliance. So keep that in mind.
Do you want
But
the
he's
motion
out
to
of-
read somehow that if it's not totally in compliance by the June 1st deadline, then
Then
the business-
enforcement action will be taken.
is that including the removal of the salt from the property?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Complete compliance. by June
Complete
1st.
compliance by that June 1st date, complete compliance, or if not, enforcement action will be taken at the next board meeting after that June 1 date. I don't know what else to do. I really don't.
Well, the only other else thing we do is change the text and allow them to hold salt there.
Yeah.
No.
That's the only other option if
I
the
don't
board-
recommend that this board do that. If he wants to independently try something, that's fine. This has to be removed by June 1st, and all other aspects of the site plan as directed by the Planning Commission has to be brought in full compliance by that date. Failing that, this board will consider, and I'm confident after tonight's discussion, will authorize enforcement action. You just got to know that, and you got to do it. There's a cost, but you created that cost.
So I'll go ahead and make the motion regarding the Mulch King to come into full compliance by June 1st deadline, including the removal of the salt from premises, as stated in the ordinance for Light 2 L1 Industrial. Is it L1 or L2?
It's an I-2.
Or I-2, I'm sorry. Failure to come into full compliance, the board may take enforcement action, which would include shuttering the business.
Is that good, Phil?
We'd have to initiate enforcement action in circuit court, so then it would become litigation.
We would initiate, I'll accept
Start
that.
the process.
We'll start the process.
Support.
Okay, motion in support of Mr. Bruning. Discussion, Mr. Steiner.
Mr. Goldsmith, question before I make a friendly amendment. So Mr. Gore stated that if it's not in compliance by June 1, the township could take action.
We'll start the
I
process.
think we should say we shall take action.
Yes.
Shall take action.
And you'll,
So it doesn't have to come back here for a vote. We shall take
if
action if
you
it's not
want,
compliant.
to frame it that way, you certainly can. That township legal council is authorized to take action if it's determined by the planning department that the site is not in full compliance, including the removal of the salt, no later than midnight on June 1st. That makes it pretty clear.
Along with all the other variances and amendments and approvals and extensions we've done, has made it very
Well, that's
clear.
yeah, that's the historical background that you've done that time and time again.
Oh, all of our ducks are in a row. I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Can I get one thing straight? The friendly amendment is being put
Accepted.
in? Okay, by both? Todd?
Todd?
What
You
was that?
accept that amendment by the...
Yeah, I accept that.
Okay. All right, Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Nay.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Jandisek?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Nay, and my nay is because he's done so much in the past few years, and he's so close. But you're right.
5 years.
You're right. It's taken a long time, for sure. And I do not blame this board, but, so, that's my thing. Okay, motion passed 5-2. Okay, moving on to comments from the public. Comments to 2 minutes.
Good evening, Logan Tisdale, 1308 Brandywine Street. I've been driving some of the roads here in Bedford Township. I see a lot of red garbage bags. That means that somebody's been out there picking up garbage along the roads. I don't think we give those people enough credit. I think we just kind of assume that people just adopt the highway and all of a sudden magically garbage that gets thrown along the highway disappears. But there are people out there working. We haven't had great weather conditions, and yet they're out there doing that. So I want to applaud them for doing that. Also want to remind the public, August 2nd is our primary. I can't think of a primary election that I've ever been through or been around that's more important than the one coming up August 2nd. They have primaries already in Ohio that have started. We have some major people that are running for office. This is going to be one of the most important primaries and general elections, I think, in the history of the state. And I think people need to get out and vote in the primaries. I realize you have to vote. I believe it's straight ticket. Am I correct in that? And so a lot of people just sit at home and don't do anything. But we have so many good candidates running. And I think people need to really come out in force. I know August 2nd is the time when everybody wants to go and do vacationing and whatever. But that is an important time for us. And I think people in this state really need to take focus on that. So I'm going to continue to remind people August 2nd is our primary, and I hope that they come out and vote. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thanks for supporting the Adopt a Road. Gail Kane, 1056 West Temperance. I'm going to talk about a need to know. Declining to answer the question at a township meeting, Mr. Peroni was the first to announce his candidacy, but the last to register with the state. Off camera, he questioned my support and suggested I may want to take my Brook sign down. Again off camera, he confessed he is taking prior to Lansing and assured me he's going to win in a big way. Now, on April 25th, while I was at the township taking care of business, Mr. Peroni saw me at the assessing counter. I told the staff that my business was not his. But I have learned, so no surprise when very soon after getting home, the phone rang, and it was Mr. Peroni. So much for confidentiality, or not. He asked if I had wanted to speak with him. Nope. He understood I had questions on the placements of his sign. Nope, bad info. I suggested he get his facts straight before he calls to harass people. He hung up. I got another call later, but I wasn't home. Folks, I have been directly involved in county and township races, and trust me when I say these tactics are not typical, but have become the norm in Bedford Township over the last 10 years. So sad, but this is a state race, a totally different perspective. Despite paying $4,500 for a sign on a LET bus and blocking the opponent's signs, signs don't vote and numbers mean nothing. Choose and vote for a candidate based on their integrity, their morals, their ethics, and the values they possess as an individual. That's how District 30 can and will make Michigan a great state.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments? Okay, seeing none, moving on to comments from township board members. Mr. Steiner?
All I can say is I'm sorry we've had to take the direction we've taken on Mulch King. But as Mr. Goldsmith said, a deadline is a deadline, and numerous ones have been broken, and we do have to put a stop to extensions one after another. That's all.
Okay, Mr. Matra?
I've been convinced that we should terminate Chief Massengill's employment with this township.
Okay, Mr. Gore?
Thanks, everybody, for coming out and staying for almost 2.5 hours. Have a good evening.
Mr. Bruning?
Nothing to add. Everybody have a good rest of the week, good weekend.
Okay, Ms. Janizek?
I have nothing.
Ms. Hirschberger?
Couple short things. The clerk's department will be sending out new voter ID cards in the next few weeks. It's due to the redistricting, although no one in Bedford has changed their districts, but their district numbers have changed. So you will be getting new ID cards. Last week, I went to the high school and I registered 120 seniors, so they'll be able to vote in this election coming up. And I just want to wish all the moms out there a happy Mother's Day, especially mine. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. That's it.
Okay, I want to thank all the volunteers that came out to the community park cleanup. Park commissioners and had partnered with some of the local churches, and Mr. Montry, our trustee, went out there and worked all day and brought some of his family out, and we appreciate that. And That's something that we've done for years now, is partnered with our local churches and get them involved in our parks. And so thank you for that. I do want to thank all the workers for Adopt a Road. It's a great program that our road commission puts on, and they do a great job. I know our youth group cleans up a road, and so many different businesses get involved and clean up. This community would not look as clean as it does without the Adopt a Road program. So many people get involved. If you are looking to get involved, Miss Keene in the back does a great job with organizing it. And if you have a business that would like to get involved, give her a call, or the road commission, and they'll direct you to her. She's been organizing it and overseeing it for many years, and we really appreciate that, Miss Keene. Without your efforts, a lot of this community would be dirty. So thank you. Appreciate that. So I want to thank the firefighters in the back, especially. You guys have stepped up in major ways the last couple months to keep the things going that we need to keep going. And Mr. Steinman's not here tonight, but I know he's been helping a lot, and we're doing the best we can. We really appreciate you guys stepping up. It is Teacher Appreciation Week, so we thank all the teachers. I want to give a quick update on the DDA. You're going to see the lights that overhang. They're going to be painted black. And the new one that's going in front of Kroger is going to be black as well. So it'll be a little bit of a sleeker look. So, and I did want to talk about Launch 734 is a program that's for entrepreneurs and startup businesses. It's through our BDC, our Business Development Corporation. They have started this program. They were in Bedford this morning, and I had an opportunity to speak. Although we didn't have a great turnout, but they're doing great things for the community and for the county. So other than that, been a very busy, productive week, a lot going on. Should be a lot of good projects. We will be discussing the roundabout soon. The Road Commission had their first initial meeting with Manick and Smith to discuss some of the details on that. We will be looking hard at widening of Secor Road from state line, a couple hundred yards past Smith Road. We got a $5 million grant from the state for that. So a lot of neat things happening. And the whole situation with Mulch King is totally unfortunate. I don't even know what to think of the situation. It has been a long time. It's a great business for the community. A lot of people love it. Everybody loves it. I mean, I'm sure most of the people on this board use it. But I understand it too from the board members' perspective. It's a tough situation that we've been dealing with other than that, if nobody else has any further comments, no. I look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, you're adjourned.